Thank you for your time.
No, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on your show, and thanks for reading my book. And I saw your review. That was really nice of you to do that for me. I appreciate it. I'm glad you liked it.
Thank you. So, can you start by introducing yourself and telling us a bit about your background and what inspired you to be a writer?
Sure. Well, I live in Washington State with my husband and our dog, Winston, and I have 4 grown children, and I do have some grandchildren, 7 grandchildren. And I think I've always known I was a writer, but when I was younger, I didn't know that I wanted to make it my career. For a long time, writing was just something fun I did. It was just for me, it was like a hobby. But it wasn't until my 30s that I realized that, a lot of people make a living at writing. It's not just something they do for fun. It's also the way they pay the bills. And I finally got a job as a writer, and I realized writing as my career is just as fun as writing for a hobby.
What inspired you to write the book, The Pumpkin Date at the Zoo?
Well, I have a friend who thought it would be great if there was a book about Pumpkin Day at the zoo. It's a real thing. A lot of zoos have it, and there wasn't one. And I guess you could say she challenged me to write it, even though I've never written a children's book. I've written other books, but nothing for children. And I thought, what a fun thing to try to do. I didn't know if I could pull it off, but I knew I wanted to try. And I knew I wanted to make it fun. I wanted the story to rhyme. I wanted it to be written in verse. I love rhyming stories. I love reading rhyming books to my grandchildren, and I loved reading them to my own children when they were little. And so with that idea in mind, that there is a day where zoos give their animals pumpkins, just imagining that day and then writing about it, it was a lot of fun.
Okay. That's that's a really nice, reason to create a book. And I'm glad you took up the challenge because it turned out really nice.
Thanks.
So how did you come up with the title?
The title actually came to me as a gift with the idea. There didn't seem to be any other title but this one, because it perfectly describes what the book is about. It's about that one day in autumn when animals in zoos are given pumpkins as sort of an enrichment exercise. And sometimes when I write a book, I'll write a list of possible titles. I might have like 6 or 7, maybe even 10 different titles that I want to think about and play around with. But there was only one title for this book. I never thought of another one, and no one else at the publishing house wanted anything different either. This was the exact right title for this book.
I would say so too. So why did you select chipmunks out of all the animals to be stealing the pumpkins and, well, basically hardworking and having to throw a party at the end?
Yeah, well, I had some choices. I could have chosen, like you say, other animals. And at first I thought, well, maybe mice. And someone at my publishing house said, I've seen books where mice are kind of in the background. Why don't we try something different? And she suggested chipmunks. I went, I love that idea. I love the idea that it's chipmunks, because they haven't been featured maybe as many times as mice. And they're kind of like the Easter egg in this book. I think you noticed it too in your review, that I don't talk about the chipmunks. They're there for you to discover, like Easter eggs in the grass. And so for each spread, there are chipmunks who are taking the leftover pieces that the animals have dropped, and they're scurrying away with them, and they're hiding them away so that they can have their own pumpkin day at the end of the book. Because chipmunks just live at the zoo. They're not in any kind of habitat. They're kind of
residents?
Yeah, they're not residents. They're just living there, as animals can do in the wild, and when they find a great place to live. And I've seen animals at zoos who aren't really they're not invited. They're not part of the family, but they live there. Like ducks might fly into a zoo and think, this is a great place to live, I'm never leaving. And that's what the chipmunks are. They're animals in the wild that have found a fun place to live, and especially on Pumpkin Day, it's a great place to live.
So then I really like the illustrations. Especially at the end when they're all just laying down and for the entire piece. Did you provide a lot of feedback to make sure they flow through your story and things?
Yeah, my publisher, Pablo Pino, he's a great, my illustrator, Pablo Pino, he's a great artist. And I loved his style. I've seen other works of his. And so I knew he was the right person to illustrate because I don't draw anything I can't draw. I knew we were going to have to find somebody. And I would give him just little, I guess, ideas for what I wanted. And part of what he drew, it shows up in the verses. So when you talk about the pumpkin landing in the hippo lagoon and it's splashing all around, he was kind of given that image with the words in the book. But then some of the drawings he came up with on his own. Like I never said, oh, and by the way, I want there to be one picture, of a beaver holding a pumpkin up to his head where he's eating out the middle. He thought of that himself. And I loved that. I thought that was great that he would find different ways to have these animals have fun with these pumpkins. So part of it was my giving him some ideas, and part of it was him coming up with his own.
It sounds like he and you had a lot of fun with it.
It was a fun project. It really was. From start to finish, we had a great time. And part of it is there's things sad or scary about this book. It's just all good fun. And it's nice every now and then to have a book that is just fun all the way around. No sad stuff happens.
I don't think there's any way you could include sad stuff in this book. And if there was, then they'd probably get edited out. Why did you select Pumpkin Day out of all the holidays?
Oh, right. Well, the idea came at me. So I hadn't thought of it at all, actually. It was just I was busy doing my other writing. I write books for, adults. And then this idea came my way and I thought, oh, that's a great idea. And the fact that there wasn't already a Pumpkin Day book, that seemed like it was not only a great idea, but there was a place for it in the world. There's lots and lots of Christmas books, and they're wonderful, and lots of Halloween books, Easter books, but there wasn't one for Pumpkin Day. And it seemed like not only was it a good idea, but it was an idea that it needed to happen. The reading world was ready for a book like this.
I think that's a very good way to put it. And so, have you worked in a zoo before?
I have never worked in a zoo. I used to imagine maybe one day that I would because I've always loved zoos. I grew up in San Diego, and San Diego has the best zoo ever. A lot of people say that. It's not just me saying it because it's my hometown zoo. It really is a wonderful, wonderful zoo. And I went often as a child with my family. And there are certain animals that I love more than others. And maybe you're going to ask me about those. And so I feel a great sense of connection to a zoo, even though I've never had a chance to work at one. I think if I didn't have something else to do, I would happily work at a zoo.
So, well, speaking of that, actually gives me the idea for the next question. What's your favorite animal?
Over the course of my life, I've had several favorites. Like I remember when I was about your age, I just loved panda bears. Everything was everything panda. I had pandas in my room, and I don't know why, but for some reason, I just loved panda bears, and they were everywhere. And then for a long time, I was all about elephants. I thought elephants were great. And lately, I don't know if you can see it, but I have giraffes in my office now. There's a giraffe right there. And I just love giraffes. I think they're the most amazing creatures ever. There's no other animal in my mind that is like a giraffe. It's so unique. Just everything about it is unique. And the fact that they have these beautiful geometric patterns, the longest eyelashes you've ever seen, purple tongues, and those long, long necks. Yeah, they have purple tongues. I just think they're just amazing. I love giraffes.
So, do you think animals like to eat pumpkins?
I think the thing about the pumpkins, from the videos that I've seen of zoo animals enjoying them and other animals I've seen actually enjoying them, is number one, they're different. I think for a lot of zoo animals, their habitats stay the same for the most part, day to day. Every day can be kind of the same for an animal in a zoo. And I think zoos that want to brighten up their day to give them something different to do, it kind of stimulates their imagination so that not every day is the same. And pumpkins can do that. So there's that. They can have fun with them. Animals like to push things around to kind of play with them like a ball. Animals can do that. And then if they break them open, they are kind of tasty inside, even raw, if you're an animal, and all the seeds inside. So I think the pumpkins kind of go a long way. They not only provide enrichment and something different to do, and something that kind of reactivates their senses. But it's also a tasty treat, and it does make that one day is different than the other days of the year. And I think that's kind of a cool thing to do for an animal that spends most of its life in a habitat.
True. So every single day they have the same old food, same old day, same old thing. Maybe chase a different person, and then
Yeah.
then one day of the year they get pumpkins, and
That's right. That's right. I think maybe they try other days to do fun things too. Like I remember in the summertime when it's hot, they would freeze things inside giant blocks of ice. And they would put the giant block of ice in the animal's habitat, and that's new and different too. And they would look at it and they might see the treat hidden inside. And it would be fun for them to spend the day watching it melt, scratching at it, trying to get the treat that's inside. I think those types of activities really go a long way in helping an animal feel like they're not, like every day is not the same, one after the
sort
other.
of paints an image in my head. I can just imagine it right now. A lion pawing at it, just
Yes.
thing, and
Yeah.
then using its legs and just trying to rub it off.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah.
can be. I've seen animals really have a ball with them, with ice sculptures and big blocks of ice.
Imagine all my books stuck in a big block of ice. I would definitely want to get them out.
Yeah, I'd say that would be a fun
Plus,
activity.
before they melted, I wouldn't want them to get wet.
Now that's true. They'd have to be wrapped up in plastic or something.
Well, I mean, if they were, then I'd have to have some scissors on me. I would definitely start
Right. Right.
reading. And so are there any interesting or memorable experiences from your own life that influenced in the book?
Trying to think. I've only like seen animals with pumpkins, I think maybe only once or twice in my life. And it didn't register to me at the time to think about writing a book. I think I know that like someday I do want to go to Africa. I do want to go on a safari. I want to see those animals in the places where they live. And I'm glad that we have zoos because many of these animals would not be able to survive in the wild. But I also feel like there's value in going to the places where they live. So it's not like I went to Africa and now I wrote this book. It's just that I still want to go. That's a part of my life that hasn't happened yet, but I hope it does.
Mm-hmm. So if you were an animal, what type of animal would you be?
Oh my goodness, what a great question. Gosh. Well, it's not a zoo animal, but I do love my dog. We have a yellow lab named Winston. And I think if I could be a dog in a house like mine, because I feel like our dog knows we value him as a companion. He's a good watchdog too, but that's not his best feature. His best feature is he's always happy to see us, always. He's never in a bad mood. Whether we've been gone 5 minutes or 5 days, he always wags his tail and greets us when we come in the door. So if I could be a dog in a house like mine, I think it would be a happy life.
Mhm. Can you tell us about the process of writing the book?
Well, for me, I like to think about it first. So I might make some notes. When I write the books that I write for like moms and dads, I write historical fiction, which means I'm writing about an event that happened in history and I want to know it. I want to feel like,
And then you
um,
just sort of fiction it up?
yeah, I create characters who aren't real, but I put them in a very real world. So if I write a book about something that happened during World War II, and the characters that I invent aren't real people, I put them in a very real situation. So I feel like I need to know that history so I can write about it, which means I have to spend about 5 or 6 months researching everything about that time in history so that I can write about it as if I was there. With
So
a
then,
children's book, I didn't really have to do a bunch of research for the kids' book. What I did do is I watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos of animals at zoos enjoying pumpkins. And I
Mhm.
made a list of all the animals that were given pumpkins to play with and eat. And not every animal is going to appreciate a pumpkin in their habitat. I didn't see any snakes getting pumpkins in their habitat. So some animals don't get them. And I wanted to make sure all the animals in my book are all the same kinds of animals that actually did get pumpkins.
Well, it looks like the zebra sure enjoys it.
Yes. Yes.
And that little porcupine looks so cute, just sitting there eating. It looks like it's reading a book, and then
Yeah,
no one bothers it. Oh no,
yeah.
maybe if I could be a panther and I could have quills and not have quills, that would be a really good thing whenever my brothers get near me.
That's true. Those quills can come in handy if you're a
True.
porcupine.
But then when I want to hug with him, I can just pull them
Yes, then
down.
you have to, yeah, you have to find a way to give hugs and get hugs without poking anybody.
I want to be vicious, but not that vicious. How long do you think it would take to write the book? I know you've already said 5 or 6 months for the researching, but for the actual writing, how long do you think?
When I'm writing a book for moms and dads, it takes about a year because those books are about 400 pages and there are no pictures. So everything has to come from me, the whole text, all of it. And so that takes a little bit longer. For the children's book, it would be easy to say I wrote it in an afternoon because I kind of did, but it wasn't perfect. It wasn't ready. It wasn't finished. I spent a lot of days after I wrote those first verses, making sure they sounded good, making sure the rhymes weren't silly rhymes, that they actually made sense and that they sounded good if you read it out loud. This is a book that's kind of meant to be read out loud. And so I would read out the verses out loud, make sure it sounded good and the timing and the meter of the verses, which rhyme, sounded good on your ear, not just to read them.
Mhm.
And then I had an editor who helped me tighten up everything. And that takes about 4 or 5 months. So really from the time I got the idea to the time where we said, okay, it's ready to be printed, was closer to like 6 months, even though the basic poem was written in an afternoon.
So that's actually pretty nice.
Mhm.
So I've actually started writing few. I've actually written a few verses, and I think I've gotten it, but I think I need to add some more based on the picture books that I've been reading now. And even though I'm not really like I don't read picture books as often, I think that it's good to get this advice so that I can like work on it better.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing with writing in verse, if you're writing a rhyming story, is um, sometimes it's hard to find a really good word to rhyme with another word. And so you end up picking words that don't really make any sense, but they rhyme. And so the story it kind of defeats it a little bit. So the best thing you can do if you're writing a story is to try to make the rhymes seem like they were meant to be together. It wasn't like you just picked a word that rhymed just because it rhymed. Just because cat rhymes with rat doesn't mean you have to use those two. Like maybe there's a better word that rhymes with cat that actually goes with your story. And it does take a little bit of time. You have to try it. You almost have to try the rhymes out like you're trying on shoes to make sure it fits well.
So I've got an idea now. The cat hit the bat and it went smack into his face.
That's good. That's great.
What message or theme do you hope we will learn from these books?
I think the biggest message out of this book is gratefulness. The animals look forward to this day. They're happy to have it. They're enjoying it. And at the very end, there's a spread where I ask the reader to imagine if the animals could talk, they would say, thank you. Like, thank you. We had a great time. And I think it's nice to thank the people that do something nice for you. So gratitude, I think, is right up there. And the other thing is to imagine that how much joy you can bring to somebody by brightening their day. You know, the zookeepers bring these pumpkins to the animals and they give them to them, and the animals like didn't ask for it, they didn't pay for it. It was just given to them and it made their day so wonderful. I think it's good for us all to be thinking of ways to brighten somebody's day without making them ask for it or pay for it.
hmm Well, instead of like giving them something, I think in this case, you give them, you give an animal pumpkin, you brighten its day.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And so, if you could travel back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think I would tell my younger self not to be too impatient for things that haven't happened yet. it's hard to be a writer and make a living at it. Sometimes you have to have another job if you're a writer, because writing doesn't help you pay all of your bills. And sometimes you have to wait for your career in writing to take off. And sometimes you have to wait for a publisher to want to publish your book. And you find yourself waiting sometimes. And it can be hard to wait. I don't know if you've ever had to wait for anything that you really
Oh
wanted.
yeah, so many
But
times.
yeah, it's hard to wait. And while you're waiting, just to sit there waiting and doing nothing doesn't really help. So I would tell myself, while you're waiting, write the next book. Or while you're waiting, do something else. Don't just stand there waiting or sit there waiting for something to happen. If you've written a book and now you're waiting to see what will happen with it, write the next one. And if you've written 2 books and you're still waiting for something to happen, write the 3rd one. Just stay busy with what to do. Yeah, right.
Book always helps me. Like in fact, if I'm reading a book in class, I can't pay attention. And then the bell rings, I'm still sitting there, and then the teacher has to tell me to get up.
Aw.
And then sometimes I'm reading, my mom tells me to get up, get in bed, and I'm at the best part.
That is hard. That is hard.
The best part is the entire book, so no excuse really.
I know. Well, one thing you can do when you're an adult is you can stay up late and read books. So there's something to look forward to when you become an adult, if you want to read that last bit and wake up a little later, or just know that you'll be tired the next day, you can stay up and finish it.
That's really good advice that you said. And so speaking of pumpkins, since this entire topic is about pumpkins, I have something to share. So once, I think it was last Thanksgiving, we had a pumpkin. It was a pretty big pumpkin, and then my sister had a piece. She got one from her school. My brother decided to be a really, really annoying person. He took the pumpkin by its stem and then he whacked it onto the ground near the stones, and then it all spilled and broke. My sister was crying. And then a few weeks later, a pumpkin started growing.
Oh my goodness.
Anything. We didn't put dirt over it. We didn't do anything. So I have something for any gardeners who are looking for how to plant a pumpkin. Take it, swing it, smash it.
That's a great story. I'm really glad you told me that. That's great.
What do you enjoy doing for fun?
I like taking long walks. I like being out in nature. I like traveling. If I can travel to somewhere I've never been before, I've always enjoyed going to new places and trying out new foods. I also like to read, just like you. I love to read other people's books, and I like being with my family. They bring me a lot of joy, and I do like to cook. I don't know if I'm a great cook, but I enjoy making a meal that my family is going to enjoy. I think the holidays are some of my favorite times because the family gets together and we all sit around and eat our favorite things. It's pretty special.
Question. Do you like pumpkins?
I do like pumpkins. In fact, my favorite, I know it sounds weird, but my favorite is pumpkin apple pie. So if you could imagine a really good apple pie and a really good pumpkin pie and kind of put those two together, it's really yummy. I had my first one, I don't know, about 10 years ago, and I thought this doesn't sound like they should go together, but it was so delicious. It's my favorite now, apple pumpkin pie.
I should try that.
Really good.
Maybe like in the next few versions of this book that you print out or something. I don't know. You should put like, I don't know, the recipe maybe.
That's a great idea. I might
I
have to
think a
find it.
lot of people would enjoy
Yeah, I
that.
think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right about that. It's really good.
Mm.
What other books do you like to read?
Well, I like to read Percy Jackson. I hate reading nonfiction. And then one day my dad showed me this video which said bunch of percentages of these millionaires read nonfiction books every day. And I don't want to be a millionaire. I don't care about being a millionaire. I just want to survive. Because the one thing I need to survive is books. I know
Yeah,
I don't need books. I want books. I'm not kidding. I need books. I will be driven crazy and I will be totally bored and I will be driven mad if I don't have a book.
There are books out there that I have read that are nonfiction, but they read like fiction. Like the author really took their time to make the book feel like it's a story, and it's not. It really truly happens. So there are books out there that are like that. Maybe you'll be able to find some that you really like.
So are you gonna write more books?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you for your time. Thank
My
you.
pleasure. Thanks for having me and for these great questions.